I appreciate all of you being here today, and we thought about canceling, but we knew we're Clevelanders, so we had to hang in. Okay, let's call our meeting to order. This is a committee of the whole for Tuesday, January the 28th, 2014. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is absent at the moment. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
And Ms. Conley.
Here.
There is a quorum.
And Ms. Conwell is here. All right, item 4 is public comment related to the agenda. Has anyone signed in?
Madam President, yes, a couple people have signed in. If you
know
please.
what? Let's take our presentation 4 since our comments may be related to item 5. So let's take item 4 out of order. Ms. Smith from Emerald City, we wanted you in green, and we thought your name was going to be Dorothy, but that's not true.
I'm starting to think I probably should have worn the Browns, Cavs, and Indians.
Okay. All right, welcome, and this is Miss Chanel Smith, who's the director of the Emerald Cities Project, and she's going to make a presentation.
Thank you, Councilwoman Connolly and members of council for having me here today. I'm here to update you on our progress since you passed the unanimous resolution in 2012 to partner with Emerald Cities to create a large-scale energy efficiency program that will address the energy efficiency needs of our municipalities in our county. But before I get into the program, which is Retrofits for Energy Efficiency Works, I would like to talk a little bit how we got to this moment. In 2009, through the stimulus, our county's municipalities, through the county's planning commission, received grants to finance energy audits for their buildings. These grants identified nearly $30 million in energy efficiency needs for our municipalities. They included things like HVAC systems for City Hall, pool heaters for rec centers, and also LED lighting for garages, buildings, and etc. Since 2012, when you passed the resolution, we have worked diligently to partner with public finance and energy advisors, which I am joined by Eric Small, who will join us in a moment, and also the Port of Cleveland, and we worked simultaneously with Nate Kelly and the County Executive's Office to create this program. Now, as I mentioned, these audits identified $30 million of projects. For some reason, these audits were not moving off the shelf. And so by being approached by Councilman Rogers, and it's good to see you, Councilman, by being approached by Councilman Rogers and other members of council, we've really worked and created this partnership that is going to that answer the question, how do you move these $30 million of projects off the table? Energy efficiency represents, for every $1 million you invest in energy efficiency, you get 21 direct and indirect jobs on the other end. You also get a great environmental impact. We know in Cuyahoga County that 40% of our buildings emit, 40% is represented in carbon emissions in our buildings. So this program, Renew, is not only an energy efficiency program, but it's also economic development and also stimulates and helps us address the climate issues in our county. It's also focused on a regional impact. By looking at our buildings and focusing on these energy audits, we can retrofit 370 buildings in Cuyahoga County. We can stimulate our local economy through good jobs, and these jobs are, trades jobs and, pipe fitters, and those sort of highly technical jobs. We can also save $3 million annually in energy costs. Our municipalities are receiving local budget cuts from the state government, as you already know. These audits revealed that municipalities can increase their cash flow if they were to address these needs. Like I already mentioned, Cuyahoga County is already a step ahead. Energy efficiency, it's a rather difficult process for a lot of municipalities to take on. One of the things that we've learned through this process is some of our municipalities have even laid off some of their facility staff, or they just don't have the technical know-how to move these projects ahead. So this program takes a 360-degree approach at energy efficiency. The traditional energy economy has really left people in energy poverty. We have people in our communities who are living paycheck to Monday. They're deciding if they can pay for their groceries or for their electric bill. And they also are going to work in energy inefficient buildings where they're sitting in their office with their coat on, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are doing that today. And so before we built this program, we actually had focus groups with about 15 municipalities in the county. We met with Honeywell, Johnson Controls, Brewer Garrett, and also the engineering community to figure out, why haven't these audits really moved? And some of the things that we found out is there's barriers to cost. There's also barriers where they need someone to come sit down with them, look at their energy audit, figure out what their needs are, and how can they make the best decision for their community as far as, calculating energy savings, but also should they be bundling LED lighting with an HVAC system so they can get a quicker payback for their projects. The other things that we notice is that municipalities need access to financing that does not affect their debt capacity. And so we've been working with the Port Authority, who has agreed to be the conduit bond issuer for these projects. For examples, we have cities like Shaker Heights, who has $1.5 million projects that need to be addressed. We have North Olmsted, who has $2.7 million. These are all projects that these municipalities have not been able to move forward, but the Renew program brings together technical assistance and financing to move that forward. This program also focuses on providing third-party monitoring verification. The way these projects are normally addressed is if you have a Johnson Controls, a Honeywell, or a Siemens come to a municipality, they do the audit, they do the contracting, and they tell you how great of a job they're doing. So basically, they're grading themselves. With us, with this program, working with the Port Authority, we can provide municipalities third-party verification and really sit down with them and help them build and create their project. It also has a strong emphasis on community benefits and ensuring that local people and local contractors have access to the jobs. We have done this by creating partnerships with Max Hayes, Urban League, Tri-C, just to name a few, by leveraging their pre-apprenticeship programs and also the labor apprenticeship program so we can actually move people up through career pathways. And so at this time, I'll actually turn it over to Eric Small to talk more about the financing.
Madam President, members of the County Council, I should now mention I'm Eric Small, Managing Director of Public Finance and Energy Advisors. We're a SEC MSRB registered municipal finance advisory firm. As a member of the Renew team, our focus has been on technical assistance and finance for the municipalities that are involved in the program. We put together structures to finance projects working with the Port Authority and other financing sources in a structure that provides what we refer to as sustainable savings. What's important for municipalities who are undertaking energy conservation measures is knowing that the savings projected are savings they'll be realized and that they can rely on to pay debt service for these projects. We also structure transactions to make sure that they're off balance sheet and they have minimal impact on debt ratings. The typical model, as Chanel mentioned earlier, for energy conservation measures, for development of measures is the ESCO model, where the ESCO comes in and provides a turnkey program. And that works for many, but incorporate in that is our expenses that can be avoided if the ESCO model is deconstructed, if the savings guarantee, which is typical in this ESCO model, is transferred to a third party, and if measurement and verification of the work done is provided by a third party. Our model accomplishes that. I'm going to run through the slides because I know that we have limited time, but the state of California recently completed a study that referred to the fact that if you're relying on your ESCO for that savings guarantee, which is typically on their balance sheet, and for the measurement and verification of savings, it significantly increases the cost of the project. Those costs reduce the number of energy conservation projects that a municipality can afford within the savings that are generated. So our approach, our model, maximizes the savings, which generates more projects that the municipality can undertake. The Renew model is built on 4 pillars: third-party technical assistance, standardized documentation that reflects best practices in the industry, a third-party savings guarantee provided by an insurer that's rated AA+ by Standard & Poor's, where the municipality is the beneficiary of the guarantee, and third-party measurement and verification ongoing. This is an example of the project we're working on with Seven Hills. They're undertaking energy conservation measures for their City Hall complex, the rec center, service garage, fire department. The ongoing measurement and verification would track, taking into account the historical energy usage. It tracks the projected energy savings. It tracks the projected baseline, the scenario where no projects are undertaken, and it tracks the actual performance so that you can identify if there are any deviations from the expected savings. Our process is pretty straightforward. Our municipalities are encouraged to undertake their own contracting, to identify ideally an engineer that does the initial audit, which determines the scope of the project, rather than relying on the ESCO to do so. And as I mentioned before, provides third-party verification of savings and third-party savings guarantee. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Now, is there anything that council needs to do other than, this update? I think we've voted on this, or?
Honestly, I would urge Cuyahoga County Council and Cuyahoga County government to have its own public buildings to be a part of this program. I've been working in energy efficiency around the country for about 7 years, and very few counties are actually taking a comprehensive approach to energy efficiency and energy usage in their buildings outside of LA County. And so as the county looks at its building stock and you get ready to move, or you are moving, you're getting rid of buildings, I would encourage the Justice Center and other buildings to be a part of this program, because it is very much so a comprehensive approach to energy efficiency, and it helps you save money and also creates jobs and opportunities for those in Cuyahoga County.
Ms. Simon is going to be our chairman of Environment and Sustainability, and I would suggest that you get in touch with her and possibly make another presentation or whatever with her committee, and she'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, let's go. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Rogers, did you want to say something?
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to thank Chanel and Eric for their work on this. We, if you'll recall, we did approve legislation over a year ago partnering with Emerald Cities. And as a result of this work, we see that 50 of our 59 municipalities have an opportunity to participate in this program. Also want to thank the Port Authority for providing the financing for this, which is critically important for this to occur. So, we have the opportunity now to witness, $3 million worth of savings for municipalities as a result of this program. So thank you guys for your hard work, and I can see a lot has been accomplished over the last year.
Who wants to say something? Okay. All right, thank you. Yes.
The presentation was brief but meaty. Can we get an electronic copy of it sent to all of us?
Okay, and you can get in touch with Mr. Nani and he'll follow up. Okay, all right, we have public comment related to the agenda. We have a number of elected officials and past elected officials. I see Mayor Posick recently of Bedford. I guess, are you looking for something to do now that you're not the mayor anymore? Okay. And Councilman Conwell, the other half of our Conwell team, and some other elected officials. So we'll be hearing from Mr. Kelly in just a minute, Kevin Kelly. So who signed in first?
Mr. Timothy Russo. As a reminder, if you could come up to the podium when I say your name, state your name into the microphone, make sure the light is on the microphone, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Russo.
Thank you. My name is Tim Russo. I'm a candidate for county executive on the same ballot in May where this syntax may appear. I've listened to this debate with some amazement. Who could have known that Art Modell would rise from the grave in this council chamber? Art Modell had a lease. May God have mercy on his soul. My mom made me say that. Art Modell told us he needed renovations. Art Modell even had a syntax already on the ballot to give him his renovations as he planned behind our backs in secret to leave. Art Modell then broke his lease, left Cleveland with no team in the middle of the campaign for the syntax he begged for. When billionaires sign a lease, they can break it whenever they feel like it. Money takes care of the rest. When the county, the public signs a lease, it's holy, how dare we touch it. Losses get socialized, profits get privatized. This game is rigged. That's why all these suits are here. I used to be one of these suits, jumping from one billionaire's bidding to another. They're here for one reason, to make sure the money that the billionaire's paying them gets its way, no matter what. How big will that check have to be from one of these suits to make you forget Art Modell? I don't have much. But for this Browns fan, there is no amount of money that will make me forget Art Modell. Don't play this rigged game and be the sharp end of the money behind these suits. If a landlord can't afford renovations to his property for his tenants, and his tenant is a billionaire, they sit down and work out a new deal, so do it. Here's the nickel from the smoker and the beer drinker, the poorest people in Cuyahoga County. And there's the three billionaires team of suits. Who do you think should bear the burden? Or ask these billionaires to get creative. Why not join Colorado and Washington, legalize marijuana, tax that for the three stadiums, make everybody happy. The next second, every suit in this room will start lining up for their first $10,000 a month marijuana lobbying gig with R.J. Reynolds. Try anything at all, but do not fall into the same old trap Art Modell set for us 18 years ago. We are here to self-govern, not be governed by money. Just remember how you felt the day Art Modell showed up in a parking lot in Baltimore, and how you felt when we brought the Browns back. Our teams leave Cleveland when we say they leave Cleveland. We don't have to dance to their tune. We are human beings, not human resources. We make the music, not the money. I will use my voice as candidate for county executive to defeat this syntax if it gets to the ballot on May 6th. It is unfair, immoral, and unnecessary capitulation to whatever demand the biggest pile of money wants from the poorest among us. But far worse, it is evidence that we may have forgotten Art Modell.
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
For that reason alone, it needs to be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
The next speaker is Tim Berkeley.
Mr. Berkeley,
Madam President, members of council, thank you.
speak into the microphone.
Sorry, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm not quite as adamant about the side of this. I just wanted to let you know what I get out of being a worker for this city at the councils or at the properties that this tax helps support. It allows me as a member or as a worker to support my family, and it allows me to take care of the ones I love. And I don't really have, I don't remember. I do remember Art Modell. I've been here since 1965, but that's old news. I don't have anything to say about that. But the extension of this tax is would be an effective mechanism for the county and the city to pay for the renovations that we are responsible for anyway, and the upkeep of these that I believe we are, by contract anyway, responsible for. Excuse me if I seem a little nervous. I'm not used to speaking that. These facilities are important to my brothers and sisters of the IATSE local, for the jobs that it supplies us and the workers at these facilities. For years in the past and the years to come, we support the extension of this tax, those that I have spoken with. If this tax is not extended, we are still on hook to pay for these renovations and the capital repairs of these buildings. And I would rather pay 2 cents for a tax on a beer than I would rather see some other public revenue stream that we haven't, that would impact us as workers and the people of Cuyahoga County and my family. Excuse me. I do not know who the people are, though I have just learned partially who one of them is, but I do not believe that they will be harmed by this tax. I respect that this council has a decision to make, and I thank you for your time to allow me to speak to the council today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Terry Joyce.
Mr. Joyce, welcome.
Thanks, Council President Conley, members of council, county executive, and members of the community. I rise here as business manager of Labor's Local 310 and also as president of the Cleveland Building Trades. And to inform you just the critical role that having 3 major sports teams has in our community, and to the members of the Cleveland Building Trades. The hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars that privately, both the Haslam family, the Dolan family, and the Haslam family. Geez, I'm a better public speaker than this.
Gilbert.
And the Gilbert, and of course Mr. Gilbert put into their facilities year-round, year after year. The amount of our members that work on these projects is too immense for me to even mention. I'd be happy to go to each individual union and draw up the hundreds of thousand hours that these facilities have for our membership. So I rise here today to urge you to continue this sin tax. I think it makes smart business. It's smart business to keep these facilities at tip-top shape, and it's a small investment into the lives of the Cuyahoga residents that year in, year out work in these facilities. We would be lost without them. They're as important to us as both the steel industry and the auto industry in this town. And we at the Cleveland Building Trades are proud to support the sin tax, proud to help these sports teams stay in Cleveland, and look forward to the great work that's going on there currently, although our members are pretty cold down at that Brown Stadium right now, removing some scoreboards and some seats. But I guarantee you, at least the members of my union, there's 35 of them there now, would be on unemployment, would be sitting at home, and would not have the great work that's going on down there now, 6-7 days a week. It'll carry us through this winter, and we're just tickled pink that these projects are happening, and we need this tax for them to happen in the future. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Next speaker, Dave Gilbert.
Gilbert?
I thank you all for the time and hearing all this today. I actually come representing 2 organizations that I lead, and just want to give you a little bit of a perspective from each. Positively Cleveland, which is our Communities Convention and Visitors Bureau. A couple important things that the teams bring to the table as it relates to overall travel and tourism. One, the people who come to see our teams, the Browns, the Indians, and the Cavs, are not just locals. They can give you numbers, but we know that significant numbers of people at every single one of those games comes from outside the region, spends significant amounts of dollars in Cuyahoga County, and then goes home. So the dollars that they generate are critically important. Also, whether our teams win or not, they're on national television, and they wear Cleveland. They proudly wear Cleveland. And so their image building for our city is also critically important. And we also know that if any one of our teams decides they want to leave, there are cities around the country that are lining up. In fact, many of them have built facilities waiting to take teams from cities who show for one reason or another that they aren't able to support it. Also, just want to give you a quick perspective from the Sports Commission. I've added up the numbers of events that have been held at major national events at Quicken Loans Arena, at Brown Stadium, First Energy Stadium, and Progressive Field. Major events like U.S. Figure Skating Championships, U.S. Gymnastics Championships, NCAA first and second round, NCAA regional, NCAA men's wrestling, 7 different collegiate football games, including having Ohio State here that drew tens of thousands from out of town, numerous events at Progressive Field, non-baseball events or Continental Cup events. Collectively, these events have had well over $100 million in economic impact for Cuyahoga County. And we are in a very competitive industry, and part of it relies on terrific facilities. The last thing I'll say is, I think from my perspective, it's not advocating that that these kinds of facilities are built and maintained with public funds, but it is how it works in our country. Nearly all of these facilities have wholly or significantly are wholly or significantly owned by the public. And again, while it's not the structure that we create, it's the structure in which we live. And so, I would just ask you to please consider putting this on the ballot, that we can look to trying to make sure that we maintain these facilities and make sure that they continue to bring in the economic impact that they do. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
John Granzier.
Mr. Granzier, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of council and County Executive Fitzgerald. My name is John Granzier, and I am the owner of the Clevelander Bar and Grill on East 9th and Huron in the Gateway District. For almost 11 years now, I've been the owner, and I wanted to speak briefly about what the Q and Progressive Fields means to our business. Frankly, having the arena and ballpark is everything to our business. To put that statement in perspective, on event nights compared to non-event nights, we roughly do about 8.5 times more in revenue on event nights. Based on non-event night sales, it would be virtually impossible for us to open our doors. I can safely say the same for virtually almost every restaurant and bar in the Gateway District. Most, if not all, would disappear, just as in the days before these facilities were built. However, the biggest fear I have is if the Cavs and Indians were to leave Cleveland and head to the suburbs. That is a trend going on right now in professional sports. If these facilities are left to decline and the owners get offers from suburbs touting new facilities, tax breaks, etc., they are as good as gone from Cuyahoga County. And with them, all the jobs, tax revenue, and the billions of dollars put into our economy. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember the days of filling the tank and jumping into the car and driving a couple hours back and forth to the Coliseum in Richfield. I remember hoping there was not a big traffic jam on the 2-lane roads in and out of there. I remember once being stuck for 2.5 hours coming home for a concert. Let's not forget that our beloved Cleveland Indians almost left town before these facilities were built. They were almost certain to be sold to an owner who wanted to move them before Mr. Jacobs bought them. No owner would move them to a smaller county in Cleveland. They would run the risk of eventually being moved. In a time when we are seeing an incredible resurgence in our downtown, why would we want to take the risk of taking a giant leap backwards if we were ever to lose these facilities? One could argue that if the jobs, the taxes generated, the money generated from over 4 million people that come down to the Gateway District for events alone are the backbone of the economy in our downtown area. These jobs and revenues are vital to Cleveland's resurgence. Thank you for your time, for allowing me to speak on this issue.
Thank you very much.
Ari Marin.
Mr. Marin?
Thank you, Council President, members of council. I'm a real estate developer with a family company. My brother and my father work with us. Our company's called MRN Limited Partnership. Over the last 20 years, we built East 4th Street in downtown Cleveland, Uptown in University Circle, the Tudor Arms and Holiday Inn Express hotels, and in 8 buildings catty-corner from the West Side Market. I remember when I was a junior in high school, my dad was lured to come downtown with his toolbox and 10 employees by Tom Yablonsky, who I see is here in the city of Cleveland, to redevelop housing development where Flannery's is today in the Buckeye Building. And I remember asking him, growing up in Shaker Heights, Dad, why would you go downtown? And he said, you know, they're building these ballparks. The Indians are moving, and the Cavs are coming back to downtown. And he did that. He saw that, and he said, I'm going to do the first housing development in the Gateway neighborhood because that happened. And I came back from college. I came to Cleveland. We worked with the city and the partnership, and we built House of Blues and Pickwick and Frolic and Lola and all the other stuff on East 4th Street with 224 residents moving downtown. That caused Rosetta to pick up and move downtown. And since that time, our company now has more than 400 people working for us, so it grew from 10 to more than 400. Our tenants have more than 1,000 people working for us across the city. We pay more than $1.7 million annually in property tax. I don't even calculate the sales tax. All of that happened because the ballparks came downtown and allowed us to build East 4th Street, and we're going to keep going because of it. Without that influx of traffic downtown, without what the teams and the ballparks mean to downtown, I can safely say I wouldn't be here today. None of it would happen, and I'd be far less excited about being in Cleveland. So we're building a city in downtown that's attracting young people, we have 96% occupancy with housing downtown, 12,000 residents. It's the talent that's coming from around the country that's coming to Cleveland, and it's because of the work that we're doing here today that's caused that to happen. So thank you very much for your partnership, and I'm excited to continue to work with this council, county executive, and all the people in this room to continue the momentum in the city.
Thank you very much.
Pastor Aaron Phillips.
Oh, well, he got a special spot for him.
Oh, okay. I actually was going to piggyback on what he said. Good
you want
evening.
you want me to go first? I mean,
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Good evening to the county executive, to the county council. I'm here today to represent the Baptist Ministers Conference, the United Pastors in Mission, and the Baptist Pastors Council. We have about 300 churches in all, and I've been the designated person to come to this meeting today. I think because it was so cold, our president sent me. I want to first say we are, as pastors, and I heard in the debate on Sunday, someone said that, one of the candidates said that alcohol and cigarettes is not a sin, so they didn't know why they called it the sin tax. We don't care what you call it, but we know that there's a huge revenue stream generated by it. And our concern is not that we don't do this, but because these are public dollars, we would like to see more participation from the African American community when it comes to supplies and jobs. I would be very interested to know how many African American folks are working down there right now from the labor issue. Because when and I don't know if there's a compliance office or not, but we have noticed we need jobs in our communities. And when these projects are taking place, there is not a lot of minority participation. We have many of our young men and women who are qualified and ready to go to work, and they can't find work, and they're not being hired. So we would like to see a part of this progressive plan, that there are some serious minority participation from the supply side as well as from the job side be provided for folks in our community, because we need jobs. And we're going to be, many of us, even whatever you call it, a sin or not, we know there are folks in our churches who smoke and drink and who will be paying these taxes, and we want to be a part of the solution and continue to make our city great. We support making sure that we continue having our sports teams. I'm a huge football fan, so we support that, but we want to make sure that all of us are participating, not just a few of us. And it seems like there's a huge subsidies always going for the billionaire folks. So we want to get some folks who need some economic help as well. So that's what we're asking for you all to do, to make this a part of that to some way make that a part of the plan to have serious, substantial minority participation as far as providing some economic help in for our folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor. And I know that there's not people from your congregation that are smoking and drinking.
I wouldn't say that.
Josh Domengos.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak again. I have many issues with the continuation of this syntax, many of which I've outlined, but I will use this as a chance to summarize. First of all, and very importantly, the jobs. The jobs are not as they were promised when this was originally voted in. There are many fewer jobs, less than 7,000 instead of the 26 or 28,000 promised. Anyway, either way you count it, almost 20,000 short is far below an acceptable ratio. How many jobs would be created if the money went to badly needed public services from this syntax, including Cleveland's infamously bad roads? I think that it would be a much better way to spend public money on public services instead of public facilities for multimillionaires and billionaires. Secondly, this is about money, but we still don't know what kind of money the teams have or what the status of their books are. How much of this money is simply going to be a profit subsidy for these multimillionaire and billionaire individuals? Additionally, we are on the hook for this ongoing public commitment. How much more are we going to have to spend? How many more redesigns and quote-unquote improvements are we going to have to build, and for how much longer? Is this a permanent tax disguised as a renewable excise tax? How much longer are we on the hook? As long as these buildings are standing? As I've said before, I do not want this placed on the ballot. The issue will become muddied, confused, and blurred, as is often the case in education advertisement campaigns seeking money. I do not want this issue placed on the ballot, but if it must be placed on the ballot, I think there are some things that we need to have done before it is placed on the ballot. We need to renegotiate the leases with better terms so the arenas become self-sufficient. We need the teams to open the books and show us the status of their money and their cash flow and their profitability. We need a guarantee of their continued presence in the county. There's this implicit threat that they're going to leave. Let's get an explicit guarantee that they are not going to leave. And finally, I would like to see an oversight committee created made up of normal citizens to establish goals for the Gateway District in terms of jobs, finances, employment, representation of minorities, and the county in general. I think only with the meeting of these terms should this be placed on the ballot. Otherwise, I hope you will vote against placing it on the ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, these are all the speakers who have signed in to speak. However, there will be an opportunity during the public hearing to speak, and if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak as an opponent or a proponent at that time, please fill out a form over there at the desk and hand it to me, if you will. Thank you.
And I understand Councilman Conwell is here, and I believe he signed in and he wanted to speak. So you want to come up? Welcome, Councilman Conwell.
I'm not used to being on this side over here. I'm used to being with my colleagues. And good evening, and to my
See,
gorgeous
the difference
wife,
is I don't have a
Yvonne.
mic. I don't have a button to cut your mic off. Like.
And matter of fact, I met with you, county executive, 2 weeks ago over breakfast. And let me say this: my residents are suffering. People constantly come knock on the door of my house, Yvonne's house, really. They come knock on the door asking for services and resources. My residents are suffering. Resources, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, a young girl came to the door and she was going to be evicted from her house with her 2 children. And we took care of that in this young girl in a bitter cold. And a lady called me up yesterday. Matter of fact, she came down to city council also, because the water is going to be turned off. People are suffering. They're suffering in the community. But they look at, it's all about the price of government. And they look at how we're meeting about billionaires' behalf. But they don't understand that we do need the stadiums. We do need the Cavs to be here. We do need the Browns to stay because it's image also, and it brings money to the community. It puts people to work in the community, and we need that. And a lot of cities don't have a basketball team, baseball team, and a football team. That's unique, man. That's very unique. And let me say this, I've been hearing about the Browns giving dollars to the community and the Cavs, and they do. The Browns, for the Glenville, and Nathan Glenville scores, by the way, they put a scoreboard up for Glenville. Spent thousands of dollars in the Glenville football field at least 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they also, with the Cavs, the Martin D. Poor Center, put a learning center there for our children so that they don't have to walk in the community with idle hands. And that center that they put together at Martin D. Poor Center is benefiting our community and the children in that community, and their grades and test scores are going up. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. But the people don't know because they don't have a scorecard saying what they're doing in the community. So I support that. But here's the other point. People who are suffering in my community, they want to know what they're going to get out of this deal. And we live through our children. And our children, we need to create a fund that the Browns, Indians, and Cavs will put dollars into, and you have a scorecard saying that they donated to Martin D. Poor Center, that they donated to Glenville High School to keep children off of the streets. And as the former safety chair before they kicked me out, when you look at the homicides in the city of Cleveland, majority of the young people are murdering each other because idle hands. Idle hands. But if we create a fund for children, for our rec centers that's falling apart, if we create a fund for the people, then the people will see somebody is fighting for them, colleagues. That's what they want to know, the ones that vote for you, our board of directors, that we're fighting for them. Then we could funnel money over there to help Glenville Recreation Center out. And the kids don't have to walk the streets because they're doing something and they're learning. They're learning. And your job anyway, which you do well, is about dealing with family issues, and we build families and make stronger families. And then that way, the outcome measures will help out the schools. Because you start by building families first. Because we need, when you have strong families, then the schools, it's a marriage between the schools and the families. So this right here is a chance to fight for the people, to have synergy, win-win for the Indians, the Browns, and the city of Cleveland, but also the people that are suffering and my residents that knock on mine and Yvonne's door every day throughout the day asking for resources. So we need to sit down, and I support the sin tax, but we need that fund to help people out too. And people, the businesses came up here. Ari Mar, great job. But I had you to hire my residents when you did the Uptown project. You did a good job. Put them to work, believe in the power of work. And now, when Yvonne and I put together that job fair and people working there and they're walking to work, crime went down in that area. Is that correct? And that's what we need. It's all about the people. They want to see that you're fighting for them. So we need to create a fund and sit down with the Browns, the Indians, and the Cavaliers. They say they give $36 million. Let them show the scorecard so that they can help the people out. That's what I'm asking about. I will support the sin tax and go door to door with my army, with people in my community, if we do that for the people. So I'm here to support it. I'm here to support the sin tax. We need it, but we need to fight for the people too. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much.
And my wife and I, we will talk pillow talk later on tonight about this. Have a good day.
I'm not touching that one. And I understand Council President Kevin Kelly is here and would like to address council.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all members of council. I just wanted to take a moment just to reiterate a couple of my comments from Tuesday and just really look at what the focus of the issue is. Certainly the economic impact of the teams is undeniable. The construction jobs, the momentum of the city, that's all very important. But we're here because we as a community made a decision decades ago, and we made a decision to tax ourselves to build these facilities. And part of that is that we need to maintain them. And as a result of that decision, we entered certain obligations. And I am here to ask you to put this on the ballot so that we, as the owners of the City of Cleveland and Gateway, as the county and the city's representatives, can meet its obligations. Again, I've heard today about millionaires, billionaires. They're not the issue. The money would go to the owners, which are the City of Cleveland, Gateway, the Cuyahoga County, City of Cleveland. And while they may hold title, we all own these facilities and we all have an obligation to maintain them. I've also heard about that there should be monies for roads. I've heard about crime. I've heard about a number of better uses for these funds. But the thing that we need to remember is that because we have these obligations, we have to pay for that. We have to meet these obligations. So to meet those obligations, it's either going to come from an extension of the excise tax, or it's going to come from the fund that funds roads, that funds schools, that funds funds safety, and all those other services that have been mentioned in this forum today. So I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've been very gracious listening to me, and I thank you. But I just want to keep the focus on the issue is extending the excise tax so that we can meet the obligations that we as a community voted on decades ago. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Fitzgerald?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I want to make a few comments about this. I think this is a particularly difficult issue for people to struggle with at this moment in time because of things that are happening economically in this community, in this state, in this country, or even the world. And that's why this discussion about whether or not this is an extension of a tax to help billionaires, if that's what it was about, I don't think this council would put it on the ballot, and it certainly wouldn't have a prayer to win, because the reality is that right now in the world, you have a bigger gap between the haves and the have-nots than you've ever had before. It's just an interesting study that came out. Some of you probably saw it, where the 85 wealthiest people in the world have more wealth than the bottom 3.5 billion people in the world. And so to have a discussion about this, if that's the way it's framed, it would be an absurdity. Because I think all of us would probably agree that there's this tremendous disparity, and most of us don't agree with that disparity, and we wish that we had a system that addressed that. But this sin tax is not going to address that in one way or another. We made a decision as a community after coming out of the 80s and the 90s, when there were constant discussions about whether we were going to lose our sports teams. And I remember those discussions, and most people in the room here are old enough to remember those discussions. And the teams don't want to deal with it directly, but I think it's the elephant in the room, and we have to talk about it. There was constant rumor and pressure and machinations behind the scenes about whether or not Cleveland was going to be a city that had major league sports teams. Are we or are we not? It wasn't just the Browns. It wasn't just the Browns. It was also the Indians, and at different times the Cavs. And the decision that we made as a community was that we were going to own the facilities. We weren't going to own the teams. Sometimes I wish that was an option. But we were going to own the facilities. That was going to be the contribution of the community to whether or not we were going to have major league sports in this town. Now, I wish that we had an economic system where owners paid for their facilities, but we don't. If that was on the ballot, I'd be happy to vote for it. But these teams are mobile. And if we own the facilities but do not maintain the facilities, it gives the teams and the owners, although they are very reluctant, understandably, to say this, it gives them the option to leave. Now, there are many, many cities in the United States that have decided not to publicly subsidize sports facilities. Many of them have made that decision. And they are cities that do not have major league sports franchises. And if we want to be a city or a community that does not have major league sports franchises, we could withdraw from that whole world. isn't going to hurt the billionaires any, by the way. They will go to a community that will. This is a constant struggle that elected officials and communities have to decide. It's the same thing where if a large company says, we've been offered a tax break in another state and we will move if you don't match it. Do you tell them to go ahead and leave? Or do you say, well, we're going to have to look at if we can match the offers? It's a terrible game to be caught in, but you have to decide whether or not it makes sense. If the community feels that these teams are not worth it, then the sin tax shouldn't be put on the ballot, or it should be defeated. Now, here's another question I think has to be asked, just as a proposition. Has the fact that these facilities have been located now downtown, and that's been established as a fact now for quite some time, has that been good for Cleveland or bad for Cleveland? Not did they fulfill every promise they made, because the answer to that is no. Some of the projections were very rosy and were not fulfilled. The question is, has it been good for Cleveland to have the Cavs and the Indians and the Browns downtown or not? Has that created jobs or not downtown? Has it created construction jobs and service jobs and restaurant jobs and transportation jobs and hotel jobs, or hasn't it? Yes or no? And I think we need to get, as this campaign continues, we need to get more specific about that so we can define it to voters. Because again, if we're going to have a theoretical discussion about whether sports team owners should pay for more things, then I don't think we're going to get very far. Thirdly, we have to talk about, with all the investment that we're making downtown, whether it's in our convention center or the new convention center hotel, which we began demolition on the old county administration building yesterday, or the other hotel projects, or the Euclid Corridor project, or the East Bank of the Flats. Are these facilities being located downtown? Do they help with that? Or if they left, what would it happen to all the other investments that we make into downtown? Another question, I know there's been some attention to this, but I think it deserves more. What happens if it's defeated? What happens if it either isn't put on the ballot or it is put on the ballot and it's defeated? What happens then? Well, two things happen. Number one, alcohol and cigarettes get a tax cut. They get cheaper. I don't know exactly who is helped by that. I suppose there are some folks that say that that is a benefit to society. I don't know that it is. But that definitely does happen. Cigarettes are cheaper, and alcohol is cheaper. Okay. Then we're going to go through this dance that many of us remember in the 80s and the 90s, where we've got to decide if we're going to default on our obligations. And we're either going to default on some of those obligations, or we're going to pay for the upkeep of those and improvements to those facilities that we own, and we're either going to pay for them out of general fund revenues that we use for human services, job creation, public safety, and all of the things that we fund on a daily basis, or we start going through this dance with the teams about whether or not we're defaulting on the lease or whether we're not, and whether they're going to stay and whether they're going to leave. And some people have forgotten those discussions, but they're going to start all over again. And I don't think it's a very appealing choice, because every single day this council and this administration has to make decisions about what human services we're going to fund and not fund. And as flawed as the sin tax may be, at least the revenue of the sin tax is not something where we are cutting human services in order to fund the upkeep of these stadiums. Lastly, I think there's an excellent point that was made by Councilman Conwell and my old friend Pastor Phillips. There can be discussions and negotiations, I believe, and I think they can happen soon, and they can happen before there is a vote, not a vote of the council, but a vote of the people, about what's going to be used with the proceeds of these funds. I think that could happen, because we are not going to have a successful campaign for this sin tax if there is not a real discussion about what all of the benefits are. And there can be a discussion between interested parties about what the benefits are, and I think that discussion should happen. Now, some of those things, as Councilman Conwell mentioned, some of those things have already happened and most people don't know about it. Some of them are things where I think it is reasonable, and my guess is, and I have not talked to the teams about this directly, but my guess is the teams would be willing to say, here are some things that we think we can do. One of the things that I'd like to know is we have a plan for downtown development, and we have a plan for economic inclusion when it comes down to downtown development. And I would like to know how these additional revenues are going to complement that or supplement that. And that discussion is completely reasonable to expect. And I think if that discussion doesn't happen, I don't see this having a prayer of passing. And I think that can happen. I think that can happen on an expedited basis. This thing is, I know that it is very tempting for people to say, tell these owners to go to hell. There's many a Sunday afternoon where I've thought that. The problem is they will go to hell, or Texas, or Los Angeles. That's not really a solution. It may make us feel good. What I want to know is, how do we come out of this with something that's actually where we can define to the public how we're going to benefit the community? And we're not quite there yet. Now, we're on a very strict deadline. I understand that. And so I don't think the discussion is complete. And I am sensitive to the fact that council has to take a vote on this in order to allow the discussion to continue. And so I hope that council doesn't view your action, whatever it may be, as the final word, because I think there's a chance to complete the community conversation and consensus, which needs to happen, that hasn't occurred yet. And if I can play a productive role in that, whatever the political consequences may be, I don't care, because this is a big issue that is going to affect the long-term effects or long-term benefit of this city, and that's more important than anybody's political career or consideration. And I'm happy to participate in that if I can play a productive role, as I'm sure council would like to too. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Council is well aware of this next step as to the distribution of the money, but that's our next step. So we're just taking one step at a time today. Now, I have to rely on my clerk here. We have an item for a public meeting at 4:45. So it's my understanding we have to adjourn until 4:45 to start the public meeting to comply with the statute, right? So we're going to stand adjourned for approximately 16 minutes.